everybody, this is Angela Savage, the daughter of IndyCar driver Swede Savage. It's time to watch stories from motorsports. My buddy, Doug Kenney, loves to share the journey of people in racing, and he is an amazing dude. Drivers, owners, fans, and team members, watch the SFM podcast.
Hey everybody, this is Doug Kenney from Stories from Motorsports. I'd like to thank my buddy Josh Mabe for the YouTube work he did years ago that inspired me to create this platform. I'd like to thank my buddy Victor Sifton for convincing me to get back into it after my hiatus from 2017 to 2019. I have a very special treat for you all today with an amazing journey from an amazing racing figure. Drivers, start your engines. Hey, can I speak to Mr. Dorsey Schroeder?
Who's calling?
Douglas again.
Is this about the interview?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let me get him. I think he's downstairs. Hey, hon, did you pick up?
What?
I thought he picked up on the other line. Let me run down and see if I'm in the house, and I think he's outside. Hold on.
Okay.
See if I can find him. Hey, hon? Well, I seem to have lost track of him here. Oh, here he is. Hold on.
Hey Dorsey, my name is Doug. I'm wondering if you'd answer some questions about your racing career for a book I'm writing.
Sure, Doug, no problem.
Thank you. It means the world to be talking to you.
I appreciate that.
No problem. My first question is, what's your first victory of your racing career? Your first. What was your first?
Oh, my first victory was in a Fiat 850 back in 1971, and that would have been in my first driving school at a track that's no longer a track any longer. It's a place called Mid-America Raceway.
Ah, where was that?
Yeah, it's in Wentzville, Missouri. It was a beautiful track. It was my home track at the time.
Ah. So you're from Missouri, right?
Yeah, originally, yeah.
Ah, that's really cool. I'm from Colorado.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I did a lot of racing up in Colorado.
Yeah, I'm from Estes Park. Have you ever been there?
I have been there, yeah, a long time ago. Very long time ago.
I miss it up there.
Where are you now?
I'm now in Phoenix.
Oh, boy, that's a big difference.
Have you ever raced there?
Phoenix, yeah, I've won there several times.
Oh, wow. Of all the wins in your racing career, which one is your favorite?
Oh, boy, you know what? Individual wins are hard to, pick through, because you look at championships, which is a combination of a lot of wins. Let me think about that for a minute. I think one of the wins that stands out in my mind that is one of the most important wins, I guess, was the New York Times 500 in Watkins Glen. I think maybe it was around 91. I think that's correct.
Yeah.
That was a big win. But you look at other wins, winning like the 24 Hours of Daytona is special because that's such a huge team Hours of Daytona winning that such a huge deal.
Yeah.
And the 12 Hour Sebring also, but that the difference there is that you're co-driving with another driver, and it's it's a team effort, which makes it special. But on the other hand, the 500 at Watkins Glen by yourself, winning that, that's pretty special also.
Yeah. Watkins Glen is my favorite racetrack.
Yeah, it's a very good track. It's one of the best in the world, definitely one of the best in this country.
All right, that's pretty cool. So you have a Rolex 24 watch then, since you won?
No, I don't. And the reason for it is because back in the day when I was running it, when I won that race in 24 Hours of Daytona, I think at 90, I think it might have been 1990, they only gave away the overall victor Rolex, and they didn't do it like they do nowadays, where all of the winners get a Rolex. They only gave it to the one then, so I did never get one.
Oh. But nowadays they give it to all the winners, right?
Yeah, all the class winners and co-drivers all get Rolexes now. And back in the day, only the overall winner and his co-drivers got them. So it was 3 Rolexes instead of whatever it is now, 12.
Yeah. My third question is, what's racing in NASCAR like? Because I think you were a road course ringer for a while.
Yeah, for quite a long time. NASCAR racing, and that's changed too, I should say, over the years from when I did it to where it lies now. If you're a road racer and you go into NASCAR, none of the things that you learned, none of your skills that you learned in road racing really apply to the oval at all. And that's the first stumbling block. Then secondary to that, you're not doing much driving when you're doing NASCAR. I mean, you're just going through an oval, so you're not steering a great deal at all, and you're not doing a lot with your feet either. I mean, you're wide open most of the time, and if you're not wide open, you're lifting off the throttle or you're braking very gently. But it's not like road racing where you're really, you're accelerating really, really hard, and then you're braking really, really hard, and you're having to shift through the gears to downshift, and you have to go right and left, and so it's still racing and it's still a car, but it's so different. It's just black and white.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. What was?
The biggest thing about NASCAR is, unfortunately, well, I say unfortunately because I'm a road racer, I guess, but if you're going to make considerable amount of money as a professional race car driver in the United States, you then have to go to NASCAR. It's kind of changing around now again. When I started in the 70s, NASCAR was definitely not the top tier. It was way down the list, actually. As I got older and as racing through the country changed, NASCAR became the top tier and the place where you made the most money. Now it's kind of starting to go the other way again, I think. You see IndyCar drivers are making a lot more money. Sports car drivers like myself are making a lot more money because the factories are getting involved. And so you're back to, I hit the heyday of road racing, I should say. The heyday of road racing in the United States was the early 80s through the early 90s. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that IMSA at the time had R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company and Camel as a brand. They had the Camel GT that were spending tens of millions of dollars, which is like spending 10 times that now. Back then they were spending tons of money on road racing, so all of us were doing very well. And then, of course, when the ban on tobacco advertising and alcohol came into the United States, it took away that huge amount of money that was there, and it's never been the same since.
Like Marlboro and other sponsors? Winston?
Yeah, I mean, all those sponsors back in the day. Camel was the biggest over here. Marlboro in South America was huge, and it was huge in Europe, too. Not so much here. Reynolds was the biggest in the United States, and their Camel brand, and and also you look at the alcohol brands with Anheuser-Busch and Budweiser, and all Coors and all those sponsors from the 80s and 90s were spending hundreds of millions of dollars. But once they took that away, there's really never been a substitute for it.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. That's really interesting.
Nobody ever picked up the ball and ran with it. I mean, there was so much money being spent by the alcohol and tobacco industry in racing primarily. That was their number one venue. And then when they were banned from doing it, no other industry came and picked up the slack. And that's kind of what has hurt racing in this country since that point in time till currently.
Wow. That's really interesting how sponsors can do that.
Yeah, those were monster sponsors. I mean, those were the huge amounts of money. And
Yeah.
of course, the cost of racing has never gone down. It just keeps increasing. But the money coming into racing, sponsorship-wise, with the short, NASCAR did really well for a long time. I mean, even them, if you look at NASCAR, they had the Winston Cup. Again, tobacco. And then after the Winston Cup went away, they have faltered ever since. They've tried all these different things up to where it is now, Monster Energy drink, but they are by no means as strong as they used to be.
Yeah. I think part of the reason that NASCAR also isn't as strong as it used to be, I think part of it is because fans are kind of leaving the sport because of the inconsistency when it comes to penalties.
Well,
and the rules.
Not so much just the inconsistency with penalties, because it's gotten so much more complex. I think where it all started to go wrong is, this is my opinion anyway, and it's the same in road racing as it is in NASCAR, as it is in IndyCar, as it is in Formula One. And that is that for some reason, and it's actually not just racing, it's the whole world looking at things wherein everything should be equal. Everybody should have the same rights, everybody should have the same equipment, everybody should be this. And that's where it started to go downhill. I mean, when they started to, and I call them cookie cutter cars, when all the cars are exactly the same car, and then you put the decals on them and it makes it a Toyota or it makes it a Ford or a Chevy, then it's, when the mindset became everything has to be equal, you have to be on an equal playing field, that's when racing lost its luster.
Yeah.
Because all cars look alike, they all sound alike, they all run alike, nobody can pass anyone. It's taken what it used to be completely out of it.
Yeah.
One of the neatest things in my era was the different sounds, for instance, of the different engines and the different configurations. Some of them running very high RPM, some of them not running nearly as high RPM, but they had bigger displacement. And some of them made their speed in the corners and some down the straights. That was what made it so interesting. And now, of course, everything's exactly the same.
I see. Speaking of RPMs, I was going to ask, what exactly does revolution per minute mean?
Revolution per minute is actually it's the crankshaft at the bottom of the engine is the main part of the engine. Okay, the crankshaft is what is connected to the rods and the pistons, and that is the main part of the engine. It also connects at the back end through the flywheel and the clutch into the drive shaft, and that is your main drive through the engine. Now, RPM is revolutions per minute, so it's how many times the crankshaft turns in 60 seconds.
That makes
sense. So now
sense.
you look at incredible amounts of speed there, but that's just the crankshaft. So when you think about the camshaft, which is what opens the valves, and not all engines have them anymore, that runs at a different speed. It runs, it runs at twice the speed. It's a smaller piece as well. So revolutions per minute is crankshaft itself is how many times it rotates in 60 seconds. And now that being said, too, to make it even more complex and to confuse you further, when you look at a drag race engine and they say it's turning, say, 11,000 RPM, right?
Yeah.
So a top fuel engine or a funny car engine at 11,000 RPM, the race is over in 3 seconds. So it didn't actually equate to 11,000 RPM because it would have had to run for 60 seconds to get there.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Now I understand.
So like on an IndyCar engine or a Formula One engine, which is the one that turns the most RPM of anything, they actually run for a considerable lot longer than 3 seconds. They run hour-long races, so RPM is an equivalent measurement. So revolutions per minute, so every 60 seconds, a Formula One car is turning 18,000 times at the crankshaft.
Wow, that must be spinning really fast.
You can't even see it. It's spinning so fast.
Oh my gosh.
Then if you look at like a NASCAR engine, it's turning between, say, 8,500 to 9,400 times in that 60-second period.
Whoa.
Yeah, so, that is where a lot of things are different between the different types of engines and the different types of configurations. On a most simplistic basis, what an engine is an air pump.
Oh.
So this is how you have to think about engines, regardless of what their configuration is, whether it be 2-valve per cylinder or 4-valve, whether it be anything, it doesn't make any difference. All of them work on a simple process of air in, air out. And the more air that you can come in and get out at the fastest rate possible makes the most horsepower. So think about everything as an air pump, and that's what it is. I mean, as your engine runs, it's bringing air in through the top, whether it be through a carburetor or air mass meter, through fuel injection or for whatever, carburetor. Air in then goes down, and it goes through valves, and it goes into the cylinders, and it's mixed with fuel, and then it's ignited, and then it goes out the exhaust. So the faster you can bring more air, more fuel in and out, the more horsepower that situation will make. That simplistically is how engines work. They're just big air pumps.
Ah, that makes a lot of sense.
So if you look at then, like you look at motors that are fuel injected, or fuel injected is just a more efficient way of getting the fuel mixed with the air. But then you look at carbureted, which is naturally aspirated, versus supercharged or turbocharged. Turbocharged or supercharged is a way of compressing the air before it hits the cylinder, and so you're forcing more air in, more air out, more horsepower.
Ah, I see where you're coming from.
So that's an easy way of looking at it. If you look at everything as an air pump, and the more efficient you can make the air come in and go out, the more horsepower you'll make. And the means of which you do it doesn't make any difference. The more in, the more out, the more power.
Ah, okay. Do all race cars have a constant velocity joint?
No, that's actually a constant velocity joints are new, developed by the foreign cars, actually. Those were introduced when front-wheel drive came about, pretty much. Originally, what you had in place of a constant velocity joint was a U-joint.
Oh.
And a U-joint was hooked to, usually, the drive shaft, which is the shaft that comes off the crankshaft at the back of the engine, and then transfers the power to the rear end or the transmission. And the U-joint was pretty simplistic. It was just connecting two pieces of metal together with the ability of the pieces of metal not being at the same angle all the time. So as your rear suspension goes up and down, the rear the drive shaft to the engine would change constantly.
Ah.
And so with that, you had to have some kind of a joint to, if you made it a solid piece of metal, it would bend. So there had to be flexibility in it, and that's where the U-joint came. And then as things got sophisticated beyond that point, and we started doing front-wheel drive cars, which the wheels are going up and down all the time, and they're steering right and left, that's where the constant velocity joint came in, because the constant velocity joint allows for not only the angularity to change, but also the angle of the joint itself to change. So it can go up and down, and it can go left and right at the same time.
That makes sense. What kind of joints do NASCAR race cars have?
They still have regular U-joints because they don't have front-wheel drive, and they're only taking the engine from the horsepower through the drive shaft to the rear end. So there's a U-joint at the front as it hooks to the transmission output shaft. There's one there, and then as it goes to the back of the car where the rear gear or the rear end is, there's another one there, so that whole drive shaft can not only go up and down, but it can also change in its length a short amount of time. So all the NASCAR cars just use U-joints only.
U-joints, okay. And my final question is, you drove at Sonoma in 2001, I believe. What was driving for Chip Ganassi like?
Chip Chip and I go way back. We go back to where actually when Chip was still a race car driver, we raced against each other in road racing. And Chip now is, of course, a mega car owner, a mega presence in racing of any type worldwide. He's one of the biggest car owners. He's a Roger Penske. You know, there's only a few of these guys that are that big.
Yeah.
Penske and Ganassi and
Hendrick.
a few others. Driving for him, let me say, he's very easy to understand. He wants to win.
Yeah.
At all costs. And I remember him telling me, he goes, I remember when I ran that race in Sonoma, because I wasn't a regular there, and I was actually brought in the week of the race, and the car wasn't even a car that they had. They were looking to help their point situation, so they actually built a car for me at the racetrack when I flew out there. And he's like, what is your expectation? What do you think you can do in qualifying? What can you qualify? And I said, I'd be disappointed if I qualified outside the top 5.
Whoa.
And then with no practice or no anything, we had, at one point I was third quickest, and so I was really happy with that. And then in qualifying, I made a mistake in qualifying, and we ended up doing very poorly in qualifying, which it was, and we didn't have we didn't have test time, and we didn't have time to sort the car out, and we ended up with a brake problem, and we didn't do very well, to be honest with you. But going back to Chip, I mean, it was pretty simple. What can you do? You know, he wants to win. He wants to win. He's willing to spend all the money it takes to win. The resources are not an option. He's got the money to do it. You know, he wants the result.
Yeah.
And when I go for Jack Roush all the years, you know, Jack Roush is exactly the same. You know, Jack says, I'll take care of the money. I'll take care of the engineering and development. You drive the car, but we're going to win.
Ah, okay. And just because you mentioned it, I think I really got to ask, what was the mistake that you made that caused you to qualify poorly?
Oh, actually, I just got into one corner too deeply, and you know, ended up locking a brake up and not making the corner as efficiently as it should have been done. And everything in NASCAR is so precise and so close in time that just one mistake in one corner of even a road race course like Sonoma, where there's 13 corners, you know, one mistake in one corner, just as brief as it might be, it only costs you, say, 1/10 or 2/10 is enough to take you from a position in the top 5 all the way to the back of the grid.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that.
It's that intense. I mean, when you look at NASCAR qualifying and you look at the times from the pole setter to the back of the grid, the first half of the field is probably not even 0.2 of a second.
Ah, okay.
So any little mistake that you would make, even if you missed a gear, like if you're going to second, third gear and it didn't go in right away, but you got it in, that would take you out of the top 10 instantly.
Whoa. Yeah, they're all close, kinda, aren't they? The timings, kinda.
Like I say, when you're running cars of equal everything, horsepower output, performance level, body, aero, everything, any mistake as a driver you would make, would be not recoverable from as far as a qualifying attempt would go.
Ah, okay. So, the name of my book is Life at the Checkered Line, the diary of a NASCAR and Indy 500 and sports car superfan.
That's very intriguing. And you've taken on one heck of a project when you put those three in the same group.
Yeah, I'm not just a NASCAR fan. I'm like a fan of any kind of racing series. I'm a auto racing enthusiast.
Well, and that's what I was and am still too. I don't have one that I prefer over the other. They all are intriguing, and they all offer their own challenges and their own rewards. But ultimately, I'm just as soon go out to a dirt track anywhere and watch, modifieds or anything run, than go to the Daytona 500 again and watch that run. I mean, they all on that given day is the best that you have.
Yeah. I think all race drivers are just as good as each other. And I'm scheduled to attend the Indianapolis 500 in 2019.
Well, if you've not been to one of those, it's quite a spectacular thing. I was lucky enough to grow up in St. Louis, which is only a 5-hour drive from Indy. So as a young guy like yourself, I ended up going there for qualification runs and in the race a lot of my life. And I still find it's one of the most spectacular things, the Indy 500, Daytona 500, 24-hour Le Mans, 24-hour Daytona, 12-hour Sebring. Those races are so special and spectacular that, they're miles above the rest.
Ah, okay. I've called a couple other legends already, like you, to ask them some similar questions to what I've asked you. Just for the book.
Sure. That's the most positive and the real way to learn it from the guys who've been there and done it. I've been fortunate enough to have spent 45 years in the same business. And then I'll spend it till the day I die. I used to figure I'd die behind the wheel. Now I don't think that's going to be the problem anymore. I just might die of old age instead.
Yeah, I'm going to probably be a racing enthusiast forever, probably.
Well, good for you.
Thank you. Well, it was good talking to you.
You as well, and good luck on the book, and anything I can do to help you, just let me know, okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right, buddy. See ya.
See ya.
Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Please hit like and subscribe if you did so, and please continue supporting our amazing guest. And everybody, we'll see you next time on SFM.
Hi, this is Ted Warner speaking. While the checkered flag has waved for this program, stay tuned for next week for the next episode of SFM. Thanks to Doug Kenney for what he does for motorsports.